So some of you may remember last year I did a video on the Dead Cells Return to Castlevania downloadable content that's coming, and I got a lot of hate. A lot of people were pretty upset about the fact that, one, I hadn't played Dead Cells, two, I had formed an opinion on Dead Cells before playing it. So, justifiably so, even though I said, you know what, this just doesn't seem like a game that I would like. It seems like a game that goes against my grain, so to speak. I said to myself, you know what, I would be doing a disservice to my credibility to judging the game before playing it. I've always said, I mean, even going as far back as like Castlevania Lords of Shadow, for example, that even though I was skeptical, it's always worth sitting down with it, trying it out, seeing if it's for me. So, what did I do? I went out and bought Dead Cells. Yep, picked up a copy on the Switch. And I did it a few days before the DLC came out. DLC just came out. And so today's video is going to be a little bit of a, I don't want to say a review, it's more of like a impressions of my initial experience with Dead Cells as a noob to the game. But in addition to that, I'm also going to talk about it from a Castlevania fan's perspective regarding the downloadable content, because I did also purchase the downloadable content. Is this something that you should purchase? Is this something that you should look into getting? Well, I think it really depends on what type of gamer you are. And so I wanted to make this video to showcase that. So go ahead and take a look at my experience, check out some of my gameplay footage for the game, and also I will walk you through how to unlock the downloadable content for the Return to Castlevania DLC. So sit back, grab a drink, and enjoy.
Going into Dead Cells, I admit I was extremely skeptical. On paper, this isn't my kind of game. I always have viewed video games like novels in the sense that there's a beginning and there's an end. Castlevania, for example, is a series that is, at its core, a reflection of both horror film and novels. Give me stage 1 through 10 with a boss at the end of each with a final boss at the last stage, and I'm good like gravy on, wall meat. But Dead Cells, at the end of the day, is not Castlevania, and I think that's very important to distinguish. If you go into purchasing this with the idea that you'll be playing Classicvania or even Metroidvania, you're wrong. It has elements from both, but so much more, and that can be good or bad depending on your view. So here are my initial impressions of Dead Cells several hours into my experience, as well as some information about how to access the Return to Castlevania downloadable content as if you were, like me, a new user. First, I'd like to introduce a bit of background to help you decide whether Dead Cells is for you or not. Dead Cells is, as the developers put it, a roguelite, Castlevania-inspired action platformer with Souls-like combat. Basically, your main character spawns, you find some stuff, you die, you start right at the beginning. Best way to explain it is this. Picture Castlevania 1, right? Let's say you die once. Instead of being offered to continue on stage 4, for example, you're sent back to the beginning of the game with your starter weapon. Initially, this was very frustrating for me as I, again, view games like structured stories that show some level of progression. Each level should be the same each time you play. That's just my preferred way to play games, and to each their own. However, there are some things that stick to you when you die in this game. There's special modifiers that will allow certain things, like starting back off with 500 coins, for example. The goal here is to play these randomized rooms, find different items like keys, and unlock new territories. You can collect these blue sphere things that will also allow you to buy different abilities, but if you die, you lose whichever ones you were carrying, which is why the game forces you to spend them when moving from level to level. These add up, and I believe with each run you make in the game, it keeps your tally as you chip away at unlockables. Weapons, though, you always seem to start off with the same basic sword with an immediate upgrade to a bow and shield. You can decide if you want to switch weapons around, and the benefits are right there on the screen. As I moved from level to level, I got the hang of the speedy combat and began to enjoy it until I died and went right back to square one. This is going to be most people's largest hurdle when it comes to Dead Cells. The combat is frantic and fun, like a supercharged Castlevania that feels more slippery because of the constant dodge rolls you'll be doing to avoid attacks. I'm seeing a potential future for the franchise where such features can be implemented into Konami's own series, and I like the idea of a smoother, slicker game instead of the usual stiff, rigid gameplay that we're used to. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Classicvania, but maybe it is time to bring the series to a more modern 2D perspective while keeping some of the classic elements. Anyways, let's talk about the Castlevania goodies before you even get to the DLC. It's pretty obvious before the Konami deal was worked out that the devs are huge fans of the franchise. For example, you can go into the options and change the food health recovery styles, and one of the options right off the bat is Castlevania. Dope. Okay, next up, if you bought the DLC package, you immediately can change the music to Castlevania in the options. Each section of the game you enter into features lots of different music from the franchise, but weighs heavily towards Symphony of the Night's tunes in most places. So, how do you access the downloadable content you paid for? Well, it's not immediate. You do have to attempt about 3 to 4 runs of actually attempting to beat the game. These can take between 10 to 40 minutes depending on how good you are at the combat. You'll know the downloadable content is unlocked when you pass by this red giant door towards the beginning, and these large red bats go screeching by. Now you'll need to look for Richter Belmont, who is hiding in this first area of the game. If you find another exit without finding Richter, you'll need to continue searching for him. Once located, you go down the stairs, and it's Castlevania time, baby! You'll fight skeletons, mermen, werewolves, knights, and more, all while visiting with characters like Alucard, Maria, and Shinoa. So far, I'm seeing a skew mostly towards the Igarashi era regarding Easter eggs, but there is a few choice parts, specifically this nod to Bloodlines. It's pretty obvious that the Dead Cell devs are huge fans, as there's tons of little details that stand out. I was able to get to death in my latest playthrough. When you die, you'll need to hunt for that castle outskirts area again, as it will be randomized and Richter will not be at the staircase like the first time. Happy hunting. Now, is Dead Cells worth grabbing? I'd say that depends on how you feel about progression in games. If you're looking for a linear experience, this isn't going to be for you. It's more about speedy action and platforming with a heavy focus on repetitive deaths and random level layouts. As you play and gather more stuff and abilities, you do start to feel more confident and stronger, so there is certainly a level of progression. If you're just looking for a 2D Castlevania nostalgia fix, that's exactly what this DLC is, but keep in mind, this isn't Castlevania. It's Dead Cells going, "Remember Castlevania? Wink wink, nudge nudge." This is where I think games like Bloodstained Curse of the Moon can fill the gap and feel more like Castlevania's proper spiritual successor. All in all, this is a neat experiment for Konami, and I gotta wonder if this is testing grounds for a new game developed by the Dead Cells devs. If you're a Dead Cells fan and a Castlevania fan, this DLC is a must-own. If you're just a Castlevania fan, it's really going to boil down to whether you're okay with the things I've talked about in this preview. It's got some unique aspects I've yet to explore, like apparently unlocking playable Castlevania characters like Richter. My suggestion for newcomers is to either play a demo if possible, or read reviews. Not score numbers, actually read several reviews to determine if this game is for you or not. Final verdict for me, I'm having fun with this, despite it going against my personal grain, and the Castlevania music and elements certainly keeps me interested in playing. I can't say for sure I'd have any interest in Dead Cells on its own without it, but the game's charm and lead character, despite being a bit bland initially, is starting to rub off on me. It's a well-crafted game that deserves the praise it's received, and it's ultimately just going to come down to everyone's comfort level. For now, consider me invested.
Alright, well, that's my impression of Dead Cells and the Return to Castlevania DLC. I still have a ways to go with both the main game and also that downloadable content for Castlevania. I'm pretty stoked to continue trying this out and seeing if it's for me. But so far, it seems like it's a pretty entertaining experience, and I think ultimately it really does boil down to what type of gamer you are. For Castlevania specific mega fans like myself, I don't know. It might be worth giving this game a shot just to try it out and see if you like the game first. I would not recommend that you buy this game and buy the DLC without first. Don't buy the DLC. Play this game first before you buy the DLC. Because what I would hate to do is see somebody buy the game, hate it, and then buy the DLC anyways. Because to me, it's like, if you're not having fun with the game, you're not going to have fun with the DLC. Probably not. Is it cool to run around and hear a bunch of Castlevania music? Sure, but you can probably do that elsewhere in either Castlevania games or just listen to the soundtracks. That's it. That's all for me. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. Are you glad that I actually stepped up and checked out Dead Cells? Are you going to play the Return to Castlevania DLC? Are you a Dead Cells fan? Let me know down below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again for the next video.